Day 2. It was a long night without any sleep. I couldn't afford to be tired. I just had to keep pressing forward. I walked slowly all night. There had been looters out down at the shopping center next to the train tracks. I followed the adjacent trail from down across the brook in the woods, where I was hidden in the shadows. Other than a couple camping illegally in the state forest, I hadn't encountered anyone else. It was getting light out and I had to keep moving. The trail through the state forest came out to a main road, which wasn't too far from the school where Linda worked. I decided to take a detour there, just to make sure she wasn't there. Just then I heard a deafening noise. 5 military-type helicopters flew over very low and very fast. I crouched in the cover of the woods till they passed. The road was littered with cars in both directions, abandoned. I made my way across and down the road toward the school. When I got to the front gate that led up a long drive to the school, I decided to skirt around a ball field and stay close to the tree line, rather than walk on the main drive, just in case I had to hide in the woods or take off quickly. I hid my ruck under a pine tree and climbed the chain link fence that separated the field from the driveway. As I made my way up the final hill toward the back of the school, I saw them. A dozen or so police officers in SWAT gear, milling around outside the building. I also saw Linda's car parked near the maintenance office where it usually was. There was no sign of anyone but the police. If she was still there, I had no way to get her out now. I had to trust that she followed the plan we went over many times and took off for the church right away. I made my way back, picked up my ruck, and headed for church. As I walked up the dirt drive toward the pavilion, Linda saw me and came down to meet me. We threw our arms around one another and I gave her a big kiss. Boy, was I glad to see her. We talked for a while and she told me all about her time at the school and losing power and everything that happened. She said the police showed up shortly after the power went off. They had previously set up a communications hub there with Homeland Security. That had been in place for a while. It was all made possible by a grant from the Obama administration. They had a fiber optics link and antenna installed in the roof. They had planned to use the building for an emergency management station in case of just some event. She told me that when she saw the trucks rolling in, she just casually walked out the back door, got her backpack from her car and walked out onto the ball field and into the backyard of the closest house. She said it was an easy walk to the church and nobody tried to stop her. It was too soon after the event for anyone to really know what was going on. Linda brought a co-worker with her. Gina was a young single woman who had just moved into the area and started working at the school. She's all alone with no family or friends to speak of. When the grid went down and her car wouldn't start, Linda could see she was in a panic and she just kind of grabbed her up on her way out the door. As we walked onto the pavilion, I saw Pastor, Greg, and Aaron sitting at the picnic table. Gina and Callie, Aaron's wife, who was 3 months pregnant, was helping prepare a meal. Aaron Jr., who was 11 months old, was in his dad's arms enjoying a bottle. I greeted the group and Linda introduced me to Gina. After the food was placed on the table, Pastor prayed a prayer of thanks for the food and for delivering me there safely. As we ate, Pastor brought me up to the current situation and shared his concern for his family and Greg's wife, who were at their homes and cut off from all of us. Pastor only lived a couple miles away, but Sadie, his wife, was babysitting 3 of their grandchildren. She had bad knees and didn't get around too well. He knew she could not make the walk there. Greg's wife was at their house in the next town over to the west. It's about 15 miles away. Pastor's first instinct yesterday was to walk back home. He knew Sadie and the kids would be safe there and had plenty of food and water for at least a couple days. He decided that they would all be better served if he stayed and helped Greg work on a plan to gather them all up. Down in the garage under the pavilion was an old 1971 Bluebird school bus. When Pastor was 11 years old, he got saved at his home church in rural Ohio. He was a bus kid, brought to church on that very bus through the church's bus ministry. He met Sadie years later in Bible college while he was studying for the ministry. She knew the sentimental value he placed on that old bus, and when their church was going to retire it to the junkyard, she bought it for $1 and had it shipped on a flatbed out to the church, where it was rolled off and placed in a large garage under the pavilion. A few of the guys in our church worked over the years with Pastor in an effort to restore the bus. It's probably about 85% complete at this point. It did run and was even pulled out of the garage a couple times to work on outside in the summer. Being as old as it was, the EMP should have had little effect on it due to the lack of electronic systems used on vehicles in that era. However, they were unable to get it to turn over, and Greg reasoned that the EMP may have damaged the battery, which was marginal at best to begin with. I told him I didn't think an EMP would have any effect on a battery, but possibly that because it was connected to the truck wiring, it may have been hit in that way. I told him I thought I may have a solution. I went to the garage, got a shovel, and started digging at the base of the first fruit tree that lined the dirt drive up to the pavilion. It didn't take me long to hit the first pail. I pulled it out and opened it up. It was a 13-gallon pail originally used to package chemical stripper we used at work on the floors. Inside was a new car battery which was fully charged when I put it in there about a year ago. There was 3 boxes of ammo for the Mini 14 and 3 boxes of double-aught buck for the Mossberg. There was also a 100-foot roll of 550 paracord, a knife, a leather bag full of tools, a flashlight, a package of Bic lighters, a ferro rod and carbon steel striker to start fires with, and several other useful items. We switched out the battery and the bus started. At first it cranked slowly and I was afraid the charge on the battery had been lost. Then it popped and fired up. Greg yelled out to keep it running, because if it stalled, we were afraid we would not get another shot at it. Pastor was like a little kid in a fire truck behind the wheel of that bus. There was no way he was going to let it stall out. Inside the garage were 5-gallon cans of gas used for the mowers. Luckily for us, Greg had just filled them at the gas station yesterday morning before the EMP attack. We poured 4 of them into the bus, saving one away on the side. It was decided that Pastor Greg and I would go retrieve Sadie and the grandkids and bring them back to the church. That would leave Aaron there to oversee the security for the group. He was a hunter and experienced shooter. He had a couple rifles and a shotgun. In high school in Pennsylvania, where he grew up, he was on a shooting team at a local gun club and had won several marksmanship awards. Callie, his wife, was from northern Washington state and grew up with a dad and brothers who all hunted and shot guns regularly. She herself was certainly no stranger to firearms. It was now 3:30 and it was decided that we would make the short 2-mile trip to Pastor's house to get Sadie and the kids and grab whatever supplies we could. Come right back. The trip to Greg's house was longer and would have to wait till the next morning. We didn't want to be out there on the road at night, especially in that old bus. Greg was disappointed that Lee would have to spend another night without him and was visibly worried about her. But he knew waiting till morning was the right move, and he agreed. It took us 10 minutes to get to Pastor's, about 40 minutes to gather any supplies we could, and about 10 minutes to get back to the church. Gone just about an hour, and we returned safely, with Sadie and the kids. 15 gallons of gas, 3 10-pound cylinders of propane, as well as 4 cases of water, 6 boxes of food, and a huge pile of blankets, pillows, clothing, and medical supplies and toiletries. A very productive hour by any measure. After we unloaded the supplies from the bus, it was just after 5 p.m. and we were hungry. The ladies had a fire going, and they fired up the gas grill, and boy, something sure smelled good. Aaron and Callie were the youth group leaders in the church, as well as the musical directors. They had been planning a youth field day at the church for the upcoming weekend. For that event, Aaron had purchased a bunch of ribeye steaks, a couple loaves of freshly baked Italian bread, and 2 gallons of homemade ice cream from a local dairy, which was now tucked away in the freezer but starting to get soft. He reasoned that we had no way to preserve any of it. He and Callie made garlic bread, cooked the steaks over the fire, and we had homemade butter pecan ice cream for dessert. That really hit the spot. We sat around the fire and discussed our situation. We decided that we would post a man at watch all night long. So far, nobody's come onto the property, but as time went on, people would no doubt become more desperate. Then there was the police staging in the middle school just a mile away. There was a bell tower adjacent to the pavilion. From the top, one could see for miles in every direction. There was a platform enclosed just above waist height on all sides, and a panel on top that would offer good rain protection. There were rungs welded to the tower itself, with the lowest one being about 15 feet off the ground to keep people from climbing the tower. We had a ladder in the basement that would get us to that rung with no problem. Aaron went to his house and came back with a 30-06 with a scope and 3 boxes of ammo. He told us we can keep this in the tower and whoever pulled duty would be welcome to use it. The pavilion was at the top of the hill on the property, and we could clearly see the entrance to the driveway from there, where we were sitting. It was decided we didn't need anyone in the tower until we all retired for the evening. Greg volunteered to take first watch, and we would rotate about every 3 hours or so. We let the fire burn down to the last of the men was outside, and went in at about 11. Aaron and Callie moved Aaron Jr.'s crib into their bedroom, giving the nursery guest room to Pastor and Sadie. The grandkids shared the pull-out couch in the living room. They just thought that was the coolest thing ever. It was like having a sleepover, Macy, the oldest, announced. At age 4, her whole life was one grand adventure. Linda and I took gym mats from the hall downstairs in the church and set them up in the choir loft. At the other end of the church upstairs, there was a small one-bedroom apartment which was used for preachers and missionaries to stay while there. It was decided that Gina would sleep there tonight. When Greg was done with his watch, he would crash on the couch in Pastor's office. He planned on getting up early and having breakfast and being on the road to Greg's just before dawn. I was exhausted, not having slept in 36 hours, and I was asleep before my head hit the pillow.